What's going on, y'all? It's Tochi here. Wanted to make this video for you guys for something that I have been doing for the past couple of years now. I think I'm going on maybe 2 years now, and that's been doing my own haircuts and doing my own hair. Now, about a year and a half ago, I did start doing locks. So the amount of hair that I do have to cut is pretty minimal. And, the amount that I was paying my barber, I was paying maybe like 40, $50 per cut every 4 weeks. I figured that why am I going to a barber every 4 weeks and these haircuts only last like, I would say like max, like 2 weeks if that. Like my hair grows pretty quickly, so I felt that I was paying all this money for a haircut that only really lasted like that short amount of time, and then I would be looking crazy for like the last 2 weeks before I would go and get a haircut. With my profession, I'm not able to just go every 2 weeks like some people that I know that go get haircuts. So I wanted to more or less do my own hair and invest some time into myself. So now that I start cutting my own hair, I only do it I actually do my haircut every week now. On Sundays is my, kind of like my self cuts, self love cut day. And I just spend all that time, maybe like when I first started, like an hour or so doing my own hair. And, now that I kind of know my head shape and know what I like, I can kind of cut to my own liking. And when I was going to a barber, one of the main things that I was really struggling with is that I would get a lot of ingrown hairs on my neck specifically. And I know it's specifically the way you kind of cut the hairs, it's going with the grain and making sure that everything is clean. But I don't know, just no matter how I told my barber to do my neck hair, it just always had like many ingrown hairs, which was kind of unsightly for me. It was very hyperpigmented, and I spent a lot of time these last couple of years just making sure that I understand my skin and understand my hair, so I know how to cut it in a way that it doesn't react. So despite all that, I've been cutting my hair for, I think I said 2 years now. When I first started, it was pretty rough and I was pretty nervous to cut my own hair, which is pretty normal for what I've hear. I know maybe like a couple of people that do their own cut and do their own fades, and they do say that it does take a little bit of like a mental hurdle to kind of get over that mind trick to cutting your own hair. Because when I first started doing this, I think it took me like 2.5 hours to do my own haircut, and they say over time it gets faster, and it did for me. Now it takes me about 30-40 minutes to do my haircut. Granted, I'm only doing the sides since I don't really cut the top with my locks, but despite all that, that's like a large improvement. I'm pretty much only doing like a fourth of that time of what I was doing before now. So I feel that, it's pretty quick for me now. I'm able to cut the way I like, and it is kind of therapeutic doing my own hair now. And, although it may not come out looking super professional or how barbers would cut it, it's good enough to the point where I feel like I'm happy with it and I look fresh, and like a lot of people, if you have like the barber's eye, you can probably notice if there's like a perfect blend or not in the middle of your hair or like in your fade. But to the normal civilian eye, like it looks good. And to me, that's what I was really going for, is does it look good? Am I happy with it? That was all that really mattered to me. So, when I first started, it was looking rough. You can still see that like the blend wasn't perfect, and it was a pretty actually harsh line. So it took maybe like, I would say maybe like 4 or 5 cuts, so like a couple of weeks for me to start feeling a little bit more comfortable with the actual blending process. I watched a couple of YouTube videos online. YouTube, with the internet, it's so easy to find a tutorial, and I found this guy that kind of gave me like a step by step of how you should be doing fades. Everyone kind of does it in their own style and way, but I feel that now I kind of have like a method that I like now. So I have been doing that. Every single time I do it, it's a little bit better. I personally don't like a very harsh transition with my fade, so it's a little bit more on the balder side. But that's just how I like it. Some people may see it and be like, your blend is a little bit, on the naketer side, but that's just what I like. So you gotta do what you like for your own self, not really to impress other people. I will say that the only time that I really go to a barber now is when I actually do have to go to like a pretty important event. So if it's like an official wedding or like someone's like graduation or something like that, I will go to like my barber still. So in the last like year, 2 years that I've been doing my own hair, I've only gone to the barber maybe like twice or three times max. I just went to a wedding this past December, and he was just talking to me like, dang, like last time I saw you, you had like a fro. Now you got like locks almost to your shoulders. And that was just really showing me like, oh yeah, like I really haven't gone to this barber in a really long time now. And, I'm not like particularly upset about it. I am saving money, and a lot of the money is going into like the retwist for my locks, but when it comes to the actual haircut portion of it, I'm not dropping this money for a haircut that only lasts like a week or 2 weeks. So I do love the aspect of this that I get to just do it every Sunday, and now Sundays are my dedicated cut day. And if I ever feel like doing something a little bit different, like maybe doing like a little bit of a lower temp fade, then I may try it out. But I feel that I am happy with the current cut process. So, one of the main things that I will say for those of you guys that are interested in cutting your own hair, it is a pretty jarring thing. And like I said before, it is pretty nerve wracking to cut your own hair, because it's like if you mess up, or you have a guard or a lever that's closed when you actually meant for it to be open, and then all of a sudden you have like a harsh, like bald cut that you had in, that's a lot. Thankfully, it hasn't happened to me, and I've been a little bit more diligent at looking at like the levers to make sure that they're not closed when I meant for them to be open. And that's part of the reason as to why it took me like 2.5, 3 hours sometimes to do my hair, because I was just being so nervous about making sure that the levers were actually open or closed appropriately. So, take this as you will. I will say that it is a really good investment, and if I was smart about this, I probably would have started doing my own hair during the pandemic, and in a safe environment where you weren't seeing people a lot of the time. So if I was messing up, I could have just like, okay, I'll just grow my hair out and not have to worry about like people seeing like my crazy cut. But beggars can't be choosers. I'm just happy that I'm now able to cut my own hair and be happy with what I'm able to see. So one of the main things I really like doing, probably like my favorite portion of the cut, is I would say the lineup at like my forehead, and then also lining up the mustache. I like a little bit more of a thinner mustache that I've noticed since I've doing my own hair. Those will probably be in the later on part of this video, but that's probably like my favorite part. The hardest part, I will say, is the back portion. So those of you guys that will get into self-cutting, the back portion is really, really hard. I don't, to this day, these last 2 years of me cutting my own hair, I still do not think I have mastered the back at all. It's passable, and thankfully now that I have locks, like it just covers the back of my head. So a lot of the times I will say I have messed up a lot on my back portion, and sometimes I'll just end up just cutting it all off and making it semi-bald. That way I can just put like a little side line to make it look like clean. But for the most part, my back of my head, how they say the back of your head look ridiculous? Yes, that's what it was looking like for me. So that's something that is still a work in progress. I will say that 3 mirror that you're seeing in the back of the video behind me has been pretty useful for working on the back of my head. I think the biggest thing is just how you're holding the actual clippers is the biggest thing for when you're cutting the back of your head, and then also just being very, very diligent about making sure that you are doing a little bit more of a flick as opposed to just shaving it, because that gives a completely different look to your hair when you're cutting it. So yeah, you see right here, I'm doing my lineup. This is like my favorite portion to do, and I just love looking super crispy with the lineup, so that's probably one of the biggest things that I love doing. And yeah, I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. Another portion that I find not as hard as the back, but like semi-hard, is like when I have to line up the beard like at the back portion, like closer to my ear portion. You'll see that later on when I'm kind of cutting my hair. But a lot of the things that I notice is that you have to like pull your skin back for a lot of portions for the cut. So when I'm cutting my neck, I make sure to pull the skin tight just to make sure that it's not snagging any hairs, and to also avoid any ingrown hairs, which is one of my biggest pet peeves for when I get haircuts, is those ingrown hairs. I will say that when I am actually lining up this mustache portion right here, the thing that I wasn't really realizing is that you have to like kind of tap the top of the lip right underneath the mustache, because if you don't cut that portion there, then it looks pretty rough and rowdy, and it doesn't give like a clean portion or look to the actual mustache. So that's something that I learned later on, and something that I noticed makes a noticeable difference. So I have like a whole kind of like a haircut package. I got the Babyliss Pro clippers. I have the shaver and the actual trimmers, if you guys are wondering what actual materials I'm using. Yeah, so that's what I'm using. They were about a couple $100 altogether. And then I also got the shaver. The shaver, which is like the gray device, which I'll show later on in this video, that is something that I noticed was really useful at the bottom portion of my fade on the sides that I noticed. And then also I used to use my straight razor to kind of like line up the hairline as well as the sides of the sideburns. But I've since stopped doing that because I noticed that I don't have as steady as a hand. So sometimes I'll end up cutting myself, and then I'll have like just a cut on my face, which I have been trying to avoid. So I really haven't used my straight razor in quite some time, probably in the last like 3 to 4 cuts, just because I want to avoid all of that. So yeah, as you can see here, I'm starting to get a little bit closer to the end. This portion right here, I've learned a lot of lessons and made a lot of mistakes in cutting this, and just making sure, I showed it in the beginning of the videos, that I make sure that I'm working with a clean canvas. So I just make sure to clean my beard, clean my face, clean my neck, make sure all of that is clean. That way when I'm cutting, I don't have any dirts or any gunk or grime that gets into my pores and makes me break out, because I do break out a little bit more easier than other people. So just making sure that I'm working with a clean canvas, and then also making sure that I'm cutting with the natural growth pattern of my hair. That way I don't have any ingrown hairs, which is a huge pain. And I keep on harping on it in this video, but that's just something that has just been a huge pain point for me, and one of the biggest things that I've had to learn during this process. So you can see here, I'm working on the back of my head. That portion right there at the back of the ear, that is a really hard portion. Just kind of trying to figure out how to angle your clippers while looking into the mirrors was very difficult for me. I still don't really have the hang of it down, but making sure this back portion right here looks clean is really nice for me. I haven't been able to do like a back of the neck fade. That is probably going to be something that I'll maybe try to master over the next year. But yeah, I don't even try to attempt fading that back neck the way I do the side portion. So yeah, that's just like, as long as it looks clean, it's not like looking all raggedy and bushy, that's like fine enough for me. You know, whenever it looks good to me, looks good to me. So those are some of the lessons that I've kind of learned. I will say that take your time when you're actually doing these cuts. I made the mistake of, when I thought I was confident, rushing, and then it looked a lot worse than I was expecting. So, you know, just take your time. It's no rush. I like to schedule my cut days on a day that I'm not working or have any, you know, major obligations. So just make sure you have a day where you have like dedicated time. And then I also make sure that I just, you know, put something comfortable for me to actually listen to while I'm actually doing my cut, you know, almost like as if I'm in the barbershop. You know, this is my own personal barbershop, and I just feel good in here, you know. So we're doing all these final touches. I like doing like final detailing after I've, you know, do the fade, and then also lining up the beard, and then hitting that shaver. I used to use the straight razor to do like above the mustache and at the hairline, but I find that this shaver has done pretty much the same job, so I've been avoiding using the straight razor as well. So I'm just trying to clean up the mustache. I like kind of like the clean look right there, and then hitting it again with the trimmer just to make sure there's no, rowdy side hairs. And then always making sure that you clean your face off with alcohol. That's like a major portion. I think 1 or 2 times I forgot to do that at the end. Hit it with the spice ball, as you see right there. I forgot to clean it, and then the very next day, actually, it's completely broke out. So don't make that mistake. That's something that I severely regretted. So this is the video. This is the cut. I'm pretty happy with it. Try to cut your own hair if you guys have the time. It's a nice investment. You save money. You don't have to like be reliant on a barber to cut your hair, and you can be your own barber and do a lot of these things to be self-improving on your own and staying crispy and happy with your own results. So like I said, I'm not a barber. I'm just a guy trying to look good, feel good, and do his thing. I'll see y'all later. Peace.